Hello everybody. Thank you for coming along tonight for the launch of Tony Murray's Stones book. On behalf of myself and Niall is the gentleman who sells the books at the table. As Icon Books, it's been an absolute pleasure to work with Tony Murray again. To have accessed his archive and produced this wonderful collection of Dublin material from the late 70s and early 80s, and what an appropriate setting in City Hall for this launch. I'd just like to thank the staff of Dublin City Council for enabling this. Mr. John Doyle is going to introduce, launch the book. The former founder and editor of In Dublin Magazine, which produced amongst many of the wonderful photographers in here tonight, Tom Grace, Tony O'Shea, etc. And it's such a pleasure to see all you here tonight. It is quite an important evening for ourselves at High Town Books, and especially for Tony, as the first book we did with Tony, his collection called Holy Pictures, came out unfortunately during COVID and lockdown. So Tony didn't have a chance to invite all his friends and family, work colleagues, etc. along for that event. So it's been great to be able to gather here tonight and make up for that. So thank you all for coming along. If there's anyone who's unfortunately couldn't get a book tonight, as we've sold out the amount that we brought in, you will find it on our website at www.hightownbooks.ie, and it's in a number of shops around the city: Hodges and Fitches in Dawson Street, Gallery for Photography, Museum of Photography, a library project both across the road in Temple Bar, and Hannah's Bookshop in Rathmines. I'd also like to thank Dahi O'Callaghan for producing the introduction, and for Peter Sheridan, who also contributed us into the book. And once again, I'd like to thank Tony for letting myself rummage around that archive in a room in DIT Angel Street one wet, cold Tuesday morning, and finding this amazing collection of work, which, as I'm sure he'll tell you, if it's hidden and unseen, it's a whole different story unless it's out there. So thanks once again to Tony, myself and Niall. I'm really appreciative. I hope I've thanked everyone. Thank you all for coming along. And now to launch the book, please welcome Mr. John Doyle.
To this magnificent hall. Can you hear me all right? It's a fitting place for the launch of a very fine book by Dublin. Tony Murray is a man of contradictions. He has said this himself. He claims not to be religious, but he sings in a choir that performs sacred music. He's been on the Camino de Santiago 7 times, and he has published a book called Holy Pictures. The contradictions continue. He has now produced a book about Dublin, even though, according to himself, he is culture. Kilkenny, to be precise. This was news to me when he told me last week. But at this stage, there's more of Phibsborough and Fairview and of Dublin in general to him, I think. Look at any of the photographs in this new book, DUBS, and you see a fondness for the city, its people and its physical fabric, an understanding of what's going on. He knows Dublin. I first encountered Tony nearly 50 years ago, a fresh-faced youth who arrived in the offices of In Dublin, 2 rooms on the first floor of a Bewley's Cafe on Westmoreland Street, a place where the aromas of roasting coffee beans and freshly baked buns wafted upwards as if through the floorboards. Incidentally, there's a photograph in the book of a man in another Bewley's window roasting the coffee. We now have to imagine the smell. Remarkably, after all this time, Tony is still fresh-faced. It is this quality about him that produced the pictures we see in the book, and it is this also that brought him into In Dublin, where his work started to appear in the early issues. Tony was still a student. He came with a testimonial from one of his lecturers at the College of Art, the late and lamented Rod Smith, who was a friend of Ted Turtle, one of my fellow co-founders of the magazine with Kieran McGinley in 1976. It was also on Rob's recommendation that Tony had been to Headton Bridge in West Yorkshire for a residential workshop in photography. The teachers were Martin Parr, Daniel Meadows, and Philip Jones Griffiths. A good start. In Dublin Magazine at the time was pocket-sized, A5, and was not a great amount of space to do justice to photographs, but Ted Turtle saw Tony's talent and started to use his work. And under Sid Blewett and Robert Armstrong, who took over as art directors of TED when he headed west, his photographs continued to appear, whether as commissions or standalone pieces. One of the first of his pictures printed in Dublin is reproduced in this book. Taken at the St. Patrick's Day Parade in 1976, it shows two large ladies, both wielding little American flags. These are Confederate flags, in fact, and one of the ladies also has a Hill-style Irish flag with the legend Erin Gobrow. Tony's pictures are full of these kinds of details that you only spot after a while. On the extreme left of the same picture, there is a fine, fierce-looking woman with an early version of the Trump hairstyle. In Dublin Magazine was a place where anyone was welcome to come in and offer their work. The magazine started in a kind of recession, so well documented in this book, and more or less ended in another one 12 years later. In its time, In Dublin attracted many extraordinary talents, writers, cartoonists, and illustrators, as well as photographers. Tony made the way for two other master photographers, Tom Grace and Tony O'Shea, whose work enhanced In Dublin for many years. Tony Murray has said that the three of them, and Rod Took, and for a while Martin Parr, would often meet at the same events. It was kind of like a camera club, he said. They shared their preference for black and white film, natural light, the rangefinder camera, no cropping, no flash. And as he says in the book, it was often a case of trying to get a shot of the subject without including one of the other photographers. There's one very nice such shot at the back of the book, the two Tonys captured by Tom Grace, all three at work at a Spuck protest in O'Connell Street. As Tony mentions in his interview with Gary O'Neill, at that time, the late 70s and early 80s, in spite of the grim economic times, there was an energy about and a new lively cultural spirit in the city. In Dublin Magazine reflected this vibrancy, which showed itself in the Irish Writers' Co-op, the Project Art Centre, and the Grapevine Art Centre, the Independent Artists, the Children's Tea Company, the Gallery of Photography. Dublin has changed enormously since these photographs were taken. Some pictures show scenes of terrible dilapidation and destruction, most of it now repaired. Visitors to the city at the time remarked that Dublin had suffered very badly during the war. It had to be explained to them that we had no war, unless it was one waged on the people in the living city by voracious property developers. Sean McDermott Street is flattened, the heaps of rubble and destroyed Georgian buildings around Fitzgibbon Street, Great Charles Street and Montrose Square are shocking. There is much deprivation and misery in these photographs, but the people and the city are seen with a sympathetic eye, not a cold one. And as in Tony's previous book, Holy Pictures, there's also a lot of humour. There are three mysterious photographs of a man walking along the street carrying car tires, 2 in one shot, 4 in another, 6 in the last. Perhaps it is not the same man in each case. Tony obviously followed him, or M, across the city from Montague Street to Thomas Street. They remind me of Auger's photographs of Paris street life taken around 80 years earlier. Another photograph in the book shows a very swarthy and heavily bearded Tom Matthews, the cartoonist, carrying a chair across a water bridge. Two identically small women are not impressed, neither by the cartoonist nor the photographer. They might have thought this was a surrealist prank or an early piece of conceptual art. In fact, it was Tom helping to move the In Dublin office from Westmoreland Street to Bachelor's Walk in 1978, while Tony recorded the event. The captions are minimal, but the pictures speak for themselves and for some kind of an understanding between the person taking the photograph and the person being photographed, such as the extraordinary image of a tiny traveller child drinking from a milk bottle, while a wrinkled old man sits nearby, not looking at her, with his own bottle. There is much incidental beauty in the photographs, in their light and their framing, such images as the bare-arsed man diving in at the half moon near the pigeon house, though in his case it's more of a full moon. Two women in their overalls and scarves, in concrete shelter of the wood wall, engrossed in what may be a picnic as the man cycles past. The men in the window of an auction house on Bachelor's Walk, the tangled bodies of embracing couples on the ground at a concert in Daly Market Park. The woman at a bus stop on the quays with a long, misty view of the Evening Bridge in the background. Tony Murray has recorded the sitting at a certain time. Congratulations to him and to Gary O'Neill and Neil McCormack, who produced it. His book is priceless, but today it is available for €40. I was going to say, I urge you all to buy it, but I think a lot of you already have, and it's sold out. So you can go to the website and buy it there. I now declare the shutter open.